Coffeezilla's been pumping the Epstein vids. Look at this. He wants to bury the Epstein files. 1.7 million views. Raw Epstein footage was modified. 1.4 million views. The worst cover-up of my lifetime. 2.9 million views. The story keeps changing. 1.9 million views. He does a daily drop every day of the Epstein stuff, and it goes crazy. Which, under different circumstances, I would criticize other content creators for farming this, but I wouldn't say that about Coffeezilla, because Coffeezilla has been at the forefront of covering the criminal enterprise of the Trump administration, at least from his immediate place of knowledge. Like when it comes to cryptocurrency schemes and stuff, he has never stopped covering that shit. He is actually, it's been kind of funny watching him just like lose his mind at like how very openly illegal and criminal the Trump administration is, and yet no one seemingly cares. So I don't think he's like a bandwagoner on this issue. He has not shied away from doing actually like real journalism on the Trump stuff. For other slop tubers, though, they obviously have either shied away from saying anything mean about Donald Trump because they know what their audience wants, and this is their like break off point because they recognize that the you know, it's time to jump ship, and they're little rats that realize that the Titanic is sinking, or they're still trying to do a job of like defending Trump even. Do you think you and Coffee might ever talk? I do talk to him. Just not on camera. I have.
Prosecutor Trump is tripling, quadrupling down on the idea that it's all a big hoax, despite a lot of his party campaigning on this.
It was a hoax. It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net, and so they try and do the Democrats' work.
That's right. If you care about accountability for a you're doing the work of the Democrats, apparently, and Trump doesn't want your support. This is another post from Truth Social where Trump says that it's a scam we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, despite him being one of the people heavily trafficking in this, and saying my past supporters have bought into this hook, line, and sinker. Clearly saying, if you care about the release of the Epstein files, you're not a real supporter of Trump anymore. You're a past supporter. Saying about his own supporters, let these weaklings continue because I don't want their support anymore. This obviously felt like a huge betrayal to a lot of the people who have supported Trump and expected him to come through on this promise. The last thing most of them were holding on to was the idea of a special prosecutor who could go into the Epstein case and try to get some transparency. In fact, it was reported that Donald Trump was okay with appointing a special prosecutor. This was according to John Solomon, who claimed this in an interview.
Any prompting, without me even asking yet, he says, I also think if that has a special prosecutor, that prosecutor should just look at anything credible about Jeffrey Epstein, and let's get this resolved. Let's get the American people the most transparency. Now, what does that mean? If there's a special prosecutor, this gets out of Pam Body's hands. It goes to an independent person. They look at it. They release what they can about it, and they tell the American people whatever the grand jury can squeeze out of it.
Now, this had many people saying, oh, this is great news. This will bring accountability, transparency. Here's Benny Johnson talking.
Bro, the other side of this, by the way, is that I don't even think they can do that. Because if, like, there was a special prosecutor who would obviously be deeply connected to Donald Trump, and he came out and he did this, like, wishy-washy, maybe, like, offered a little bit additional information, people would be like, okay, you didn't give us anything, you. So, like, there's that side of the story as well. Even if you do actually get a special prosecutor involved, and you, you know, put together a report that reveals at least, like, whatever is not damaging to some of our billionaire elites, I don't think it would work.
About it.
There's been a dramatic change in approach. Very powerful people inside the administration are pushing for a special counsel, full press briefings on Epstein findings, and so on. And this is because of our voices that cannot be ignored.
Right. Voices that cannot be ignored, except they were just today by Caroline Leavitt, who says Trump is not in favor of a special prosecutor at all. It's not going to happen.
The president said that he floated the idea of a special prosecutor in the Epstein case.
Bro, it's pretty funny that there is no messaging discipline on this side, too. Normally, the Republican communication strategy is airtight. Trump says something, you hear it being rehashed a million times over from from Fox News all the way down to like a 57-person subscriber YouTube page. You know, in this issue, Trump says something and everyone on the independent sphere that actually has to be accountable to their audiences immediately panic. And because they panic in this situation, because they're panicins, they start over-promising. Where they're like, oh, there'll be a special investigator, a special prosecutor, I promise. And then Trump's like, nope, no special prosecutor at all, no investigation. It's done. It's a hoax. And if you care about it, you're stupid. And then they're like, oh, he didn't mean that. He didn't mean that you're stupid. He meant that, like, you're actually brilliant. I promise. He's like, no, I meant you're stupid. And then he'll even call up people who, again, are at least like a little bit more accountable or have to be more accountable to their audiences because they're, you know, approachable, because they're online content creators. They're not Fox News commentators. And you'll call them up and be like, shut the f up about Jeffrey Epstein.
Can you confirm that? And has he asked the Attorney General to do this, to appoint a special prosecutor to look it over?
Well, the idea was floated from someone in the media to the president. The president would not recommend a special prosecutor in the Epstein case. That's how he feels. And as for his discussions with the Attorney General, I'm not sure.
Wow. That's how he feels. He feels like, we don't need more transparency. We don't need more accountability. We need to hush this up, okay? Trump has also responded when asked that he has nothing to do with a special investigation.
President Trump, would you consider appointing a special counsel to investigate the Jeffrey Epstein investigation?
I have nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it, guys. We've already done the investigation, and you should be pleased with what we put out. This was also said by Trump himself, the idea that we've already given you everything credible.
She says, I gave you all the credible information. And if she finds any more credible information, she'll give that too. What more can she do than that?
Right. She's given us all the credible information. If she finds more, she will give us more. But we already got it. If you remember, Pam Bondi already gave us the phase 1, which just included a lot of already released information. At the time, they called this the first phase, which sheds light on Epstein's extensive network. An extensive network that now includes 2 people, Epstein.
Yeah, Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, that's it. No one else. Please stop. That's the other side of this, like, where they literally, the phase 1 implies that there's supposed to be more phases. You don't just go, this is the phase 1 of the revelation, and then be like, there is no phase 2. Phase 2 is actually you. You're stupid. And also, we knew all along that it was the Democrats that wrote the list, and it was fake anyway. So we actually delivered a fake list that the Democrats wrote on our phase 1 transparency documents. I hope they drop the whole story eventually. I hope that no one drops this story, especially because this stuff is tied back to, in my opinion, a lot of the illicit things that intelligence agencies have done, whether it be the Mossad or the CIA. And I do want shady billionaires and former heads of state and former intelligence, former heads of intelligence to be held accountable. So no. Oh, you meant drop the whole story eventually, as in like, oh, drop the files, like actually release the files. Got it. I misunderstood. Well, I didn't misunderstand you. You wrote that in the worst possible way. Like, you made it seem like they're dropping an album. New Trump print dropped. Holy shit. He looks awful. I see nothing wrong with this. Dropping an album is releasing it? No, I know. But I hope they drop this case in this circumstance implies, like, stop talking about it. It's an understandable implication. I don't think I was wrong for assuming that that's what he was saying. But we cleared it up anyway. It doesn't matter. Yeah, release the Epstein cut is the real... Bro, what the man? He looks like a frog. Why does he look so toad-like? He is. This is the closest he's looked to Jabba the Hutt. Low key. Like, I never thought that human beings could achieve Jabba the Hutt status outside of Sheldon Adelson. And it feels like Trump is finally reaching peak Adelson. For those of you who don't know, Sheldon Adelson is a major, well, he's dead now, but he was a casino magnate and also very Jabba the Hutt looking. His wife also has continued his tradition of giving Trump hundreds of millions of dollars so that Trump will do whatever Israel wants him to do. Pretty openly, too. Like, it's not, he was the biggest booster of the Republican Party. I used to always joke about how, like, these be like, oh, George Soros. It's like, dude, Sheldon Adelson is the #1 donor to the Republican Party. Anyway, he's dead now. He was very hot, though, when he was alive. Yeah. Rest in piss. But, of course, Miriam lives on.
And Ghislaine Maxwell, really extensive. Kash Patel, by the way, quoted saying there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, except, of course, all the incredible information, right? If you have credible information, you have incredible information that they're gonna hide from us, I guess. With these influencers who had the binder, I guess this is part of the Democrat hoax. Can't understand why they would do that. Now, as a rewind though, what has really the FBI DOJ released that wasn't already public? Well, one of the biggest things was the tape, right? The tape of the prison cell, which actually wasn't the prison cell. It was the common area, which couldn't see Epstein's cell, which definitively proves everything. Except not only did it not show Epstein's cell, not only were there blind spots in the tape, we also had a Wired report showing that it was a modified file. This was something that went into Premiere Pro, was saved multiple times. We don't know what was changed, if anything. But now we have new reporting from Wired saying that Epstein's prison video had nearly 3 minutes cut out, which started at the, quote, missing minute. So I ask again, what credible information has really been released? The only thing that's been released is, ironically, not credible. Not only is this great for people like...
Yeah, this is great transparency, dude. There isn't... Andrew McCabe, former FBI deputy director, says the Epstein files shouldn't be released because there isn't actually any public right to be able to see sensitive FBI files. Oh my God, he's revealing, he's saying it. He's saying it. This is literally the thing that I keep saying. They worked really hard for the sex trafficking blackmail footage. The intelligence community and Epstein worked really. It would be a shame to burn it. Have Eric Weinstein on? No. Why would I ever do that?
Prince Andrew, who's now traveling around. Guess who else this is great for? Ghislaine Maxwell, who's now appealing her whole conviction on the grounds that the government already gave her a non-prosecution agreement, or more specifically, Epstein a non-prosecution agreement. And we have this statement from Ghislaine Maxwell's family and her counsel of record saying, quote, "I'd be surprised if President Trump knew his lawyers were asking the Supreme Court to let the government break a deal. Judges have previously dismissed her lawyers' arguments that she should have never been prosecuted because of a weird agreement drafted more than 15 years ago. But now, of course, this is at play again, given all the recent revelations and the fact that the family seems pretty directly to be appealing to Trump, which is an interesting turn of events if Maxwell has anything on him or someone else in power. They actually say...
I think what's crazy about the Ghislaine stuff also is that, like, she's talking like she can't get executed. You know what I mean? I don't know where she's getting this confidence that she might not have a mishap in prison. You know what I mean? Like, what leads you to believe that you won't also feel really sad all of a sudden? You know what I mean? Because that's what they packed up the Epstein stuff with that. They packed up the Epstein stuff with he was really, really sad. He was really sad that day. You know? Dead man switch? No, I don't know about that. Oh my God, you think she does? But why wouldn't Epstein have a dead man switch? If she has a dead man switch, then I suspect Epstein would have one too.
Explicitly, he's the ultimate deal maker, and I'm sure he'd agree when the United States gives its word, it should keep it. With all the talk about who's being prosecuted and who isn't, it's especially unfair that Ghislaine Maxwell remains in prison based on a promise that the U.S. government made and broke. This itself raises large concerns, given that Trump not only seems to want the Epstein thing to go away, but also that he's wished Maxwell well many times.
Yeah, this part is nutty. I mean, the whole, I wish her well. This is like one of I'm surprised, like, this is the only place we've seen it. Like, Coffeezilla is one of the only places outside of myself that is, like, routinely covering Trump talking about Ghislaine Maxwell like a scorned lover. Like, it is wild the way that Trump talks about Jeffrey Epstein, and not Jeffrey Epstein necessarily, but Ghislaine Maxwell in particular. That's a weird way to talk about the criminal pedophile sex trafficking ring operator, dude.
Maxwell is in prison. I'm wondering, do you feel that she's going to turn in powerful men? How do you see that working out?
Can you explain who she is and how she's related to Epstein? Ghislaine Maxwell is the second in command, and actually was at times. At a time, Ghislaine Maxwell was the girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, and was basically the recruitment person, like the one who was like finding victims and recruiting them, and recruiter is a weird term to say here because it's like we're talking about sex trafficking, but like she basically was the person who was the madam, the right hand man, the right hand woman of Jeffrey Epstein. But also, incredibly important role that she played here wasn't just that she was the madam who was procuring victims for Jeffrey Epstein. She was the groomer. She also was a facilitator for many of Jeffrey Epstein's initial and continuing relationships, because Ghislaine Maxwell was basically born into this like espionage family with Robert Maxwell, her father, who was a government stooge and initially worked with the OSS and then worked with both Western intelligence, the British intelligence, and also the Mossad. So she's been in this as not only just like a socialite. She's been in this this whole. She's been heavily involved in this kind of conspiracy as a socialite, but also was the person that connected Jeffrey Epstein with many of the famous people, and she was able to do this even after Robert Maxwell was disgraced, because Robert Maxwell, for those of you who don't know, was the owner of the National Enquirer, and he over his entire newspaper, like all of the workers in his newspaper. I think it was like, which movie depicted this? Was it Wolf of Wall Street? Or was it Tetris? Anyway, Robert Maxwell was a Czechoslovak-born British media proprietor, politician, and fraudster of Jewish descent. He escaped Nazi occupation in his native country and joined the Czechoslovak army in exile during World War II. He was decorated after active service in the British Army. Okay? Having said that, however, in the aftermath, it was in the movie Tetris. It was in the Tetris movie. So in the aftermath of that, the murky life and death of Robert Maxwell and how it shaped his daughter, Ghislaine. So he died under suspicious circumstances in his yacht, Lady Ghislaine. He named his yacht Lady Ghislaine. And he was it was known that he was a Mossad operator himself. And he was the owner of this newspaper conglomerate. He was like a media mogul, basically. And as a media mogul, he over the entirety of his newspaper, the Daily Mirror, I believe, not National Enquirer. Was it which one was it? What was the newspaper? Yeah, former editor of one of Maxwell's newspapers, Daily Mirror. I guess it was the Daily Mirror. British National, apart from Mirror Group newspapers, the New York Daily News, and not National Enquirer, I said that wrong. It was the New York Daily News, Mirror Group newspapers. His many businesses included Oxford United, Derby County football clubs. He rose from impoverishment as a Czechoslovakian refugee to become a decorated war hero, a businessman, a Labour MP, and then a media mogul, amassing private jets, helicopters, and Rolls Royces en route. He died on the 5th of November, 1991, and his death shocked the country. He died under mysterious circumstances, but shock turned to anger within weeks when a £450 million hole was discovered in the pension funds of his companies. A borrower of unimaginable scale, he had illegally raided the funds to prop up his empire, which was on the brink of collapse. Headlines such as "The Man Who Saved the Mirror" were swiftly replaced by "Maxwell, the Robber." For those of you who are wondering why people say Robert Maxwell was heavily involved with the Israeli state, there were numerous heads of Mossad at his funeral. He is buried in Jerusalem, and there were numerous heads of Mossad at his funeral. It's because in 1948, when the Nakba was being committed, the catastrophe, the Zionist brigades, before the inception of the Israeli nation state, needed weapons transfers. And Robert Maxwell, with his deep, extensive contacts within the USSR, was able to go against... Ne var Nezo? Nezo? Niye arıyorsun beni? Okay, so For those of you who don't know, the year is like 1946, 1947. Okay, the Israel as a state is not in existence yet. There are Zionist brigades, Irgun, Lehi, Haganah are some of the more prominent ones. Okay, these brigades are heavily armed, even though there is a blockade of weapons and weapons transfers to these Zionist brigades in what is known as historic mandate, British Mandate Palestine. Okay, these guys are literal terrorist groups at this point. Some of them actually called themselves terror cells, like Stern Gang. Okay, but they need weapons. They obviously have some weapons that they procured from the British state, because the British state is like basically pulling out at this point. Okay, but there's a blockade of weapons transfers to British Mandate Palestine, specifically these Zionist groups. The USSR, with Robert Maxwell's help, crafts a way to get around the illegal, the blockade of weapons transfers, and ships weapons by way of Czechoslovakia to the Zionist brigades. With the extensive connections that he had with Czechoslovakia and the USSR, Robert Maxwell was basically one of the initial gun runners, as is suspected, was one of the initial gun runners for the Zionist brigades. And yes, the USSR was an early defender, an early booster of the state of Israel. For those of you who don't know, they, of course, changed their attitude, but that was one of the roles that Robert Maxwell played. There's a theory that Ghislaine with the Mossad asset, given her father's history, and Epstein was more just a pedo enjoyer who loved the attention and influence, the useful pedo, if you will. Yeah, Robert Maxwell was essentially given a state funeral in Israel, for your information. Yes, he was given a state funeral. Yeah, Israel gives Maxwell farewell fit for hero. Yeah. Yeah, Maxwell also outed Mordechai Vanunu, the Israeli nuke whistleblower, and was instrumental in him getting abducted via Mossad, via honey trap in Italy. Obviously, Mordechai Vanunu is still in Israeli prison. He has a Twitter account that's like one of the saddest accounts I've ever seen, where I think it just like literally will periodically tweet that he is still not released. I don't know if I don't know what his latest situation is, but yeah, Mordechai Vanunu is also known as John Crossman, is an Israeli former nuclear technician and peace activist who, citing his opposition to weapons of mass destruction, revealed details of Israel's nuclear program to the British press in 1986. He was subsequently lured from England to Italy by the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad, where he was drugged and abducted. He was secretly transported to Israel and ultimately convicted in a trial that was held behind closed doors. Vanunu spent 18 years in prison, including more than 11 in solitary confinement, though no such restriction is mentioned in Israel's penal code, nor imposed by his verdict. Released from prison in 2004, he was further subject to a broad array of restrictions on his speech and his movement, and arrested several times for violations of his parole terms, giving interviews to foreign journalists and attempting to leave Israel. He claims to have suffered from cruel and barbaric treatment in the hands of prison authorities, and suggests that things would have been different if he had not converted to Christianity. In 2007, Vanunu was sentenced to 6 months in prison for violating the terms of his parole. He is a whistleblower. I think he's still in prison. Is he not? Has he been released from prison? In May 2010, Vanunu was arrested again and sentenced to 3 months in jail and charged that he had met foreigners in violation of the conditions of his 2004 release in prison. Am I wrong? I'm pretty sure he's still kept under close watch by the Israeli state. It might be house arrest now. Yeah. But yeah, this is this extraction, this illegal arrest and kidnapping of Mordechai Vanunu for the crime of whistleblowing about Israel's nuclear program that they fucking stole. Okay. It was conducted by Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell played a role in this. So yeah, that is Ghislaine Maxwell's father. So Ghislaine Maxwell, despite the fact that the Maxwell name was tarnished and disgraced, still was in and out of these elite society circles with ease. She was born into it, and she like very clearly still had a deep embedded connection to a lot of these people, and also played a formative role in Jeffrey Epstein, connecting Jeffrey Epstein to other elites, societal elites. So remember that when talking about like the connections, the the potential connections to intelligence.
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. She's now in jail. Yeah, I wish her well. I'd wish you well. I'd wish a lot of people well. Good luck. Let them prove somebody was guilty.
So pretty clearly,
and that's the person, Ghislaine Maxwell, that Donald Trump is talking this way about.
president seems to be extending his sympathies to Maxwell in very bizarre terms when asked, hey, do you think this person's going to turn in rich and powerful people? Well, we wish her well. So that worries me when then the Maxwell family and her lawyer are pretty explicitly appealing to the president, who wished her well, saying, hey, this whole thing should be barred because of Epstein's former agreement with the prosecutors. Speaking of prosecutors, by the way, Maureen Comey was just fired by the DOJ, with many speculating this is an order that comes from the top, from Trump. Now, Maureen was the prosecutor in the Diddy, Epstein, and Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell cases, with some people saying the timing is too coincidental with the whole Epstein investigation and Maureen Comey maybe knowing something about it. The other way to look at this is, of course, that Trump has hated James Comey, her father, for a very long time. James Comey, of course, doesn't seem to like Trump too much. He recently published a photo of Seychelles saying 8647, referring to the 47th president of the United States. So it could be the case this is a revenge firing. It could be over the handling of the Diddy trial. Or, again, it could be over the Epstein-Maxwell cases. But on the whole, what we all want is just more accountability, more transparency. We want these people to release the full files. So on that, I'm going to explore a couple leads that maybe will pan out. There's been a push by the House to have the Epstein files released. This has now become a bipartisan supported thing. Previously, it was voted against, but now they're trying to force a vote. I've kind of stated that I'm not sure that this is going to get somewhere. I hope it does, though, just to be clear. I hope they release it. I think it's been covered up for so long. I guess I'm so cynical about it. But I guess in the words of Trump, I wish them well. We wish the House well in trying to release it. I will say for the millionth time, this is not a left or right.
She is horrendous at her job. Just all pedos get away. This is nepotism at its best. What are you talking about? The Diddy one was like up, but they did successfully prosecute Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So I don't know about her being horrendous at her job. like you could say, given the deep ties that Epstein and Ghislaine have to the intelligence community, her job required her to do this cover up. Certainly. Hasan is on the list. Once again, people love to play fast and loose with this kind of thing, even though I've obviously been a firm and committed, an active person who has for years and years talked about the Jeffrey Epstein situation. But given my age, I would be on the list as a victim. So, you know.
Issue, this is the people versus the else. There's also this report from the New York Times about the $1.5 billion they're trying to chase down. This was handled by JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank. These both paid fines for their involvement in moving money for Jeffrey Epstein. Here, the legislators are trying to actually chase down some of the funds. Notably, the New York Times reports that there was a huge suspicious activity report, also called a SAR, reviewed by the congressional team that was filed in late.
Hasan, why do you preach free speech but ban people so easily in chat? Easy question, easy answer. Freedom of speech is for the government. Like, you know, when the government tries to arrest someone, prosecute someone for just their speech, like they did with Mahmoud Khalil, or even falsely detaining people at Customs and Border Patrol for being a political dissident like myself, that is actually a violation of the First Amendment. If you come into this chat, many Twitch streamers have very different restrictions on how they want to conduct their chats. I'm a very transparent person, so I will reveal this information to you once again. For us, because there are a lot of hate raids that happen and a lot of bots that come in and write like insane shit, we simply have a follow restriction. All you need to do under normal circumstances is follow for 10 minutes, and you can write whatever the fuck you want in the chat. Of course, if you know, stir shit up and come in here to falsely smear me or take advantage of my charitability and try to redirect the attention to yourself, you might get banned. Now we've upped the ante. It's no longer 10 minutes because we get hate rated quite a bit. So now it's 1 day. You have to be following for 1 day or subscribe. If you subscribe, you can obviously get through that 1 day restriction. Having said that, however, many other content creators in this space don't really even look at their chat for understandable reasons. I like to look at my chat and have a back and forth conversation, even though there are 40,000 people in here. And I do that when there are 300,000 or 400,000 people in here. It doesn't matter, right? I have had 300,000 people in here, and I've had this same exact back and forth with chatters. And the reason for that is because I value the back and forth that I can have with people, even if some people try to take advantage of that dynamic. But in order to foster good communication and ensure that there's an audience that's coming in that is charitable, that is invested in learning about new things, or maybe even approaching a subject matter from an angle that they never had considered before, I have to sometimes, get the stirrers out of here. It's that simple. That's it. Stirrers like yourself, for the record. People that come in and go, why do you not love free speech? Of course, this doesn't stop you from being able to watch the stream. You can still continue to watch the stream. You just won't be able to, and you'll even still be able to see the chat because the chat is on screen. You just simply won't be able to write in the chat. That's it.
2019 by JP Morgan for $1.1 billion. The report covered 4,700 transactions dating back to 2003, including payment.
Hasan Piker's an emotional masochist. That's why he reached out so much. No, I don't. I mean, there's a little bit of that for sure, but that's not the primary reason. I read chat because I want to foster good back and forth conversations. There are a million different opinions at any given point throughout the day that I can encounter. This is the perfect way to address people's questions, because I know for a fact that for every person that asks a question, there are probably 10,000 people that might not know the answer to that question and might actually learn something from the way that I answer that question. That's why I try to not have any sort of safeguards beyond the obvious ones like hate speech and narcissistic derailers.
To women from Belarus, Russia, Turkmenistan. Many of Epstein's victims included young women from Eastern European countries. So I will say, as many people have, follow the money is a great idea in a case like this, where Jeffrey Epstein had a bunch of mysterious wealth. Unfortunately, I have to say it's an uphill battle when the most powerful person in America, Donald Trump, seems dead set on closing these files and trying to get it to all go away. And I also encourage people to be suspicious of when a president says something is a hoax.
Oliver Darcy rips the Band-Aid off of what everyone's been quietly talking about. The Wall Street Journal is working on a story about President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. I'm told that at least one DOJ reporter is on the story and that they reached out to the White House around 48 hours ago. The Wall Street Journal relies on documentation. Oh, God. I can't take a day off. Dude! That is annoying. Open Presents, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Oh my God! Bombshell reporting coming from Wall Street Journal that goes into detail with the ties that the Trump administration has, with Trump himself has with Jeffrey Epstein, coming out soon. Open Presents, Aisha Esquire, thank you for the gifted subs. Open Presents with 100 gifted subs. An Oiler in the chat. Open Presents, thank you. The Piker Broadcasting Service, as always, is sponsored by you, the viewers. There are no ad breaks on the Piker Broadcasting Service. The real PBS, the real public broadcasting service is the Piker Broadcasting Service, only sponsored by you, the chatters, by gifters like you, for viewers like you. Thank you. Hopefully it releases on Monday. This
hoax, despite the fact he said for years there are powerful people implicated in these files, even saying that he was going to be transparent, there was going to be a wave of accountability, only now they're covering it all up. They want you to trust them, and if you don't, you're stupid and or a weakling.